My name is Kevin Appleby. I'm the Senior Fellow for Policy and Communications here at CMS. And I have the privilege of introducing our next two speakers. Hope you all had a good lunch. So our next speaker is a longtime friend and colleague. Eva Millona is currently the Chief for the Office of Citizenship, Partnership, and Engagement for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Eva also was CEO for the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition for 12 years and was a leader in the immigrant rights movement, both on the state and federal level. We're privileged to have Eva here today to speak about some of the administration's priorities around immigrant integration, which, as we know, is a hot topic these days, especially here in New York. So, Eva, we welcome you to the podium and thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Kevin, for the kind words. And it's a privilege to be with all of you here. And Mario, congratulations for the great conference. And it's great to see so many friends and colleagues in the room. As you heard from Kevin before joining the administration, I was an advocate for inclusion and integration and worked on policy issues for 2 decades. So the integration, migration policy are near and dear to my heart. I'll tell you a little bit about the new office that was created, and then I'll get very briefly to the time that I have. And Kevin, I'll be very brief and talk a little bit about the priorities of the Biden-Harris administration. So as you all know, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, as one of the components of the Department of Homeland Security, has a mission of upholding America's promise as a nation of welcome and possibility with fairness, integrity, and respect for all we serve. So the new Office of Citizenship, Partnership, and Engagement was created to really promote and enhance engagement with all sectors of our society, to hear your voices as we formulate policies, and all of you being part of the process. So we accomplish our work by creating opportunities, as I said, for meaningful engagement with the public, building relationship with stakeholder groups from all sectors of society, and ensuring that newcomers to the United States have the necessary information related to immigration benefits to successfully integrate into the receiving society. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be with all of you today discussing these very critical issues at this very critical time. My colleague, Catherine Anderson, will be here this afternoon, and she will go in more detail about the humanitarian programs and policies and the priorities. But I only wanted to give you highlights of a broad picture of our priorities and immigrant integration as well. I'll start with the humanitarian mission. USCIS remains steadfast in our commitment to fulfilling President Biden's blueprint for a fair, orderly, and humane immigration system, and creating a more inclusive and welcoming agency that helps facilitate the largest expansion of lawful pathways to the United States in recent memory. Assisting vulnerable population and improving safety for those seeking protection is at the heart of our humanitarian mission. The Biden administration had done this time and time again with the operationalized welcome and through the implementation of streamlined parole processes for Afghans, Ukrainians, Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans, and their immediate family members. The administration continues its commitment to welcoming refugees. For this fiscal year, President and the administration has maintained the refugee target of 125,000. We have been working diligently to rebuild our Refugee, Asylum, and International Operation Directorate by hiring more refugee and asylum officers in response of the growing need around the world and domestically. Under the family reunification parole process for Colombia, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Ecuador, nationals of these countries can be considered for parole into the United States on a case-by-case basis for a period up to 3 years while they wait for their family-based immigration visas to become available. The administration has also expanded temporary protected status for those already in the United States. Under this administration, there are currently 16 countries designated for temporary protected status, with recent announcement for Cameroon, Venezuela, Afghanistan, El Salvador, Haiti, Honduras, Nepal, Nicaragua, and Sudan. In addition, as part of our humanitarian mission, USCIS is responsive to national emergencies, such as the recent fires in Hawaii and conflicts around the world, such as the current events in Israel and Gaza, which often require support for those in need of immigration relief. Whether that be facilitating family reunification in times of urgent need or getting people out of the harm's way, our agency has the discretion, which we have been actively employing, to expedite immigration requests, such as family-based petitions, requests for extension and change of status, fee waivers, and employment authorization. Another big priority for the administration is to break down barriers to immigration benefits and service so that our system is more accessible alongside reducing our backlogs of immigration cases and processing times. I know, I can see your eyes looking at when I mentioned the word backlog, but we have made progress. In fiscal year 2023, we addressing the pending backlogs by reducing the workload to over 400,000 cases on naturalization. Since 2016, this hasn't happened. And we're doing this while we approved 1 million applications for naturalization in the last fiscal year. I know there is a lot to do, but these are not small tasks. Continuing to reduce the inventory of pending other forms, the I-140 and others, we are also at a 4.0 months processing time. Reducing the pending asylum adjustments workload, it's almost at the third right now. From 90,000, we're down to 600,000. Reducing the pending refugee adjustment workload also has been reduced by 20%. Overall, focusing on a hiring surge, operational efficiencies, and technological improvement, we have turned the tide on the backlog, and this administration inherited also backlogs from the previous one. Another priority is serving our customers and making sure they have a great experience when they interact with our agency. So one of the key examples is all our efforts to improve customer service. We have launched biometric self-scheduling tools. We're developing a new text ahead for attorneys and clients to hear directly for our agency. We are updating our online accounts, My Progress feature, to add other forms so attorneys and accredited representative can directly contact us for in-person appointments. Introducing a new enterprise change of address, another feature online that will be very helpful for our clients. And we have a lot more in the pipeline that are coming. So one big priority that I also wanted to mention, finding ourselves really in a unique moment in time, is that President Biden believes that immigrants and refugees strengthen our nation. They enrich our lives, our way of life. And this is the reason why the President brought back to the agenda, the federal agenda, immigrant integration. As you all know, within 13 days of taking office, President Biden signed an executive order 14012, restoring faith in our legal system and strengthening integration and inclusion efforts for new Americans. Under this order, the President directed us to develop strategies of promoting immigrant integration by developing welcoming initiatives, promoting integration, inclusion, and citizenship, embracing the full participation of the newest Americans in our democracy. Equity and inclusion are key priorities for the Biden and Harris administration. The administration calls for a whole government approach on citizenship promotion. As a result of this executive order, 16 federal agencies are working closely together to reduce the barriers of naturalization. Agencies such as State Department, Department of Education, Department of Labor, that citizenship and promotion of civic integration, it's not their mission, but the way this task force is working is to make sure that they are part of reducing barriers. And I have the privilege of chairing this, this task force, and this is year 2. We're entering year 3. And there are 12 million lawful permanent residents in the United States eligible to naturalize. So we are really pushing hard on that, and also happy to share with you that the Office of Citizenship, which is part of the Office of Citizenship, Partnership, and Engagement, just awarded $22 million in citizenship grant to 65 organizations across the country in 29 states. You are looking forward to working with them, and some of them may be in this room, but really to increase the standards and of naturalization, to reach out to those hard to reach and in areas that we have not been invested before, to make sure that there is a pathway to citizenship, and that is the goal and a huge priority. As part of the executive order that I mentioned, also, the President last December reconvened the Task Force for New Americans. As some of you may recall, under President Bush, there was a task force for assimilation, and then under the Obama-Biden administration, there was an executive order for a national integration policy, and a task force was formed. The President reconvened the task force. The Office of Citizenship, Partnership, and Engagement, it's a principal partner with the Domestic Policy Council working on these initiatives. As part of the Task Force for New Americans, 30 federal agencies being part of it, we launched since December 29 engagements across the nation that engaged over 3,000 participants from all sectors: refugees and immigrants themselves, private sector, academia, the advocacy community, the faith-based community, to hear directly from them as to what can the federal government do to reduce the barriers for immigrants and refugees to better integrate civically, linguistically, economically, socially, and politically. What we heard across the board, Kevin, 1 minute and then I'll stop. What we heard across the board was a need to build trust. The importance of wraparound services, the crucial role of navigators, the importance of improving employment-related assistance, including licensing and credentialing, and indeed to better communication and coordination at the federal level and with state and local governments and other stakeholders around existing resources. So this was the big theme, that federal coordination, because we know that the burden is on the states, we know that integration is local, and this coordination and work together with federal agencies and being coordinated by DPC and this task force, it's something that stakeholders across the board highlighted. So at this time, the Domestic Policy Council is working on a report that will be presented to the President by the end of this year, hopefully, or early next year, to really have the action steps for all federal agencies to better integrate immigrants and refugees. And I'm talking about 45 million plus who are here, and 65 million plus, including their first generation children. So we have presidential attention. We are working very closely with DPC and other federal agencies, and I'm very hopeful that we will see a report with action. There will be room for everyone to work together to better integrate immigrants and refugees. I am a believer that investing in immigrant integration is investing in the future of our country. So I will stop there with much gratitude for the opportunity to share some of the highlights of the work and the priorities, but also with a big invitation to partner, to work together. There is a lot of work that needs to be done, and we cannot do that alone. Secretary Mayorkas often said, the Department of Homeland Security, it's a department of partnership, and we cannot do this work alone. And I also, to the advocates in the room, I want to thank you for your advocacy and for all the support of our humanitarian programs and more. Backlog reduction, good customer service, responding to humanitarian crisis at home and abroad requires meaningful and continuous support for Congress as well. So I just want to thank you for your advocacy. And I'll stop there, thanking you all for all the work that you do every day. Thank you. And it is 1:15.
Yeah, we don't have time for questions, but Eva will be around if you have questions for her. We have the deputy mayor coming at 1:30, so she's on a tight schedule. I would like to invite Lee Gelernt up now to give us a little update on federal litigation. I'm just going to give a quick introduction for Lee, for those of you who don't know him, although I doubt there's anyone who doesn't know him. Lee Gelernt is the Deputy Director for the Immigrant Rights Program for the American Civil Liberties Union. As the Chief Litigator on many federal cases on behalf of the rights of immigrants in the past few years, Lee has become a spokesperson and a leader in the immigrant rights field, not only in the courtroom, but on the public stage. Lee is going to update us on federal litigation efforts to protect the rights of immigrants, which frankly is the only one of the only venues where we've had victories in the last couple of years. Certainly Congress has not given us much lately. So we're honored to have Lee here to update us on his efforts.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Thanks for having me. So I thought I would just be relatively brief in mentioning two particular pieces of litigation that can you hear me?
This thing on the side.
Okay. Is it better? Okay, sorry about that. Kevin asked me to mention two pieces of litigation, the family separation litigation and the current challenge to what we call Asylum Ban 3, which the Biden administration has a fancy name, circumvention of lawful pathways, and then maybe leave some time for Q&A. Yeah.
We will have time for one or two questions.
Okay. So family separation, I suspect everyone knows, that dates back to the Trump administration, taking little children away from their parents at the border. I've said before that in my 30 years doing this work, it's by far the worst thing I've ever seen, just absolute gratuitous, brutal cruelty. We litigated it under Trump, we won, and then the process began of trying to find all the families that had been separated, and that went on till the end of the Trump administration. The Biden administration came in and said, no more of this, we want to talk settlement. Those settlement negotiations, unfortunately, have taken 2.5 years, but we finally reached a settlement recently. And submitted it to the court, and we'll have preliminary approval of that. We have a final hearing December 8th in federal court in San Diego before the judge who's overseen it for the entire time. We hope that there's final approval. We assume there will be, but obviously, I don't want to jinx it. There's been some backlash. Congressman Jim Jordan has sent a letter to DOJ wanting to know everything about the settlement, how much it costs, all that. So we'll see what happens. But the settlement, in a nutshell, has two parts to it. The first part is backward looking to help the families that were separated under Trump, which there were at least 5,500. We think likely it's going to turn out to be more than 5,500 children. And as I think everyone in the room knows, many were just babies and toddlers. For them, the Biden administration will continue to look for contact information for those families for us to try and find them, although the Biden administration is not the ones actually out in the field looking for them. That's us doing that with all of our partners and private investigators. The Biden administration will pay for the parents to come back to join their children, and has created a process for that, which is obviously the most important thing, is getting the parents and children back. We estimate, although we've reunited maybe 3,500 families at this point, we estimate that there could be up to 1,000 more who are still not with their parents. And so those could be little children who were separated at the age of 1 or 2 that basically don't remember their parents at this point. So that reunification process is going to happen. When they return to the U.S., they will have work authorization, parole for at least 3 years, certain benefits, housing, medical benefits, mental health benefits, and then, beyond reunification, perhaps most importantly, is a special asylum process for them to go through. I mean, this is where we really needed Congress to step up and provide permanent residence for these families, given that it was the U.S. government that so brutalized them. But Congress obviously did not step up, so this is the next best thing we can do. And needless to say, there are probably going to be families that don't win their asylum cases and then are re-separated or sent back to where they fled. And that's unfortunate, but unless we can convince Congress to step up, that's the best we can do through the settlement. The second part of it was equally critical from our standpoint, which is forward-looking. And it bars the government for 8 years from engaging in this type of zero-tolerance policy. Would we have wanted it in perpetuity? Yes, this is what we got. Hopefully 8 years from now, no one's talking about engaging in family separation, but needless to say, people are talking about it now on the campaign trail. So that is critical, that it bars a zero-tolerance policy going forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that. The second piece of litigation is the challenge to Asylum Ban 3. The thrust of it is that, as I think probably everyone in this room knows, the Trump administration did 2 basic asylum bans, what we call Asylum Ban 1, Asylum Ban 2. The first required people to go to a port of entry, didn't allow you to apply for asylum between ports. That was absolutely inconsistent with the statute, which says whether or not you go to a port, you must be allowed to apply for asylum. That was struck down by the Ninth Circuit. The second ban said you need to first apply in a third country, what people refer to as the transit ban. That was also struck down by the Ninth Circuit. The Biden administration has now enacted Asylum Ban 3, which is sort of a hodgepodge of the 2 asylum bans. They say, but there's more lawful pathways because you can apply for parole. You can use an app at the port, CBP1. Our view is that it's no different than the first 2 asylum bans. The district court agreed and struck down the ban. We just had oral argument in the Ninth Circuit. We'll have to see what happens, but I think there was some feeling among the court that this is no different than the first 2 bans. The Biden administration has said that they will go to the Supreme Court, and so I think that's ultimately where the action will be. But basically, our position is that the ban sends lots of people who have credible asylum claims, and I think the government's own evidence shows that people who would have passed their initial screening are being excluded, and in significant numbers. So we believe we have to challenge it. We hope the Biden administration will change the policy, but right now there doesn't appear to be any movement in that direction. So I anticipate there either being an en banc hearing or, assuming we win in the Ninth Circuit, the government going directly to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we'll see how that plays out. But the border issue, that's a place where we have had significant disagreement with the Biden administration. We felt like they kept the Title 42 policy too long, that barred people from applying for asylum based on supposed fear of COVID. They kept that way too long in our view, and now they've gone to this. We had hoped that there would be something a little different. There has not been, and so that's why we're in litigation. Maybe a stop there and see if there's any questions about that.
We have time for a few questions, but we will have a hard stop when the deputy mayor comes. So just to warn you. Karen.
Thanks. I have one question for Lee, but I want to preface it just with a comment to say he's not giving a report. He's telling you this from his heart. And I just want to hats off on behalf of everyone in the room to Lee for leading it, living it, working it, breathing it, and really taking to heart and leading, all the inside and outside organizations working on the issue. Lee is at the core of it, and everybody should know that he owns this issue more than anyone in the country.
Thanks, I appreciate that, Karen. Very
You're
much.
welcome. The question is, you're a litigator, so your job is to, well, should we hold the question, Kevin?
Go ahead.
Okay. You're a litigator, so your job is to challenge the stuff, but on a policy level, do you have a suggestion about dealing with the numbers issue and the political issues associated with that, short of challenging every single thing they come up with? How's that for a 3-hour question?
Yeah. So I think you're absolutely right. I think we believe that this policy is unlawful and that we had to challenge it, and whether it's a Democratic or Republican administration, there obviously then needs to be a fix and policy prescriptions. And lots of groups have put forward something, and I think that's probably a longer conversation in a smaller room. And other people are here, like Eleanor, who have put forward detailed policy prescriptions. For that, I think what we would like to do is really have the administration roll up their sleeves and think a little bit long term. The one thing I would say is they spent 1.5 years rolling out regulations in immigration processing and asylum processing, and they've never implemented those. And those we thought were a start. Everything wasn't perfect about those, but they were better. And one of the things it did is allow asylum officers to grant asylum right there at the border to avoid the backlog of completely credible cases then clogging. And so there are lots of things we think they can do. But while this policy is in place, we felt like there wasn't any room to negotiate, and so we had to go to court. But thanks for the question. I think you're right to focus on that.